The winter wind screamed through the cracks of the small cabin like a hungry wolf searching for a way in. Snow beat against the wood walls, and every blast of cold air felt like a warning that death was close. Sarah pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders as she stared at the last weak glow in the fireplace. The fire was dying, and so was her hope. She had no firewood left, no real food left, and no one to help her. Her husband Tom had died 6 months earlier. Fever had taken him in just 2 days, leaving her alone in the mountains with no family nearby. The few settlers who had once lived close by had moved when the harsh winter came. Now the world around her was nothing but snow, silence, and fear. Sarah tried to survive, tried to keep the trap lines her husband taught her to maintain, but she was not strong enough. Her small hands could not pull the heavy steel traps, and the animals seemed to know she was weak. Days passed with empty traps and an emptier stomach. Her body shook from hunger. It had been 3 days since she last ate anything real. She had tried to eat a sprouted potato from the cellar, but it made her sick. She lay on the floor that night vomiting, too weak to even cry. Sarah looked at the snowstorm outside the frost-covered window and knew she could not survive another week. She felt herself fading. Some days she thought about walking into the storm and letting the cold take her. It felt easier than fighting for another painful day. Just then, she heard it. Heavy footsteps on the porch. Her heart jumped into her throat. She froze where she sat. No one should be out here. Not in this weather. Not this far from town. Was it a man? A thief? Something worse? The wind howled, and for a moment she wondered if she imagined it. Then came a firm knock on the door. Not violent, not angry, just steady. Sarah's voice cracked as she called out, "Who's there?" The storm nearly swallowed her words, yet a deep voice answered through the door. "Name's Jake, ma'am. Saw smoke from your chimney yesterday. Thought I'd check if you needed help." A man, a stranger, a mountain man by the sound of him. Her weak body trembled. He could be dangerous. Or he could be the first sign of help she had seen in months. With shaking hands, she lifted the heavy bar from the door and pulled it open. A rush of snow came in with the wind. A large man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, covered in fur and leather, his beard white with snow. His eyes were a clear, cold blue, sharp but kind. Behind him stood a horse loaded with supplies and several freshly killed rabbits. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat with respect. "Looks like you're in need of a hand." His eyes took in her thin body, her pale face, the cold cabin with no fire. Sarah tried to stay strong, to pretend she could manage, but her knees went weak, and she stumbled. Jake stepped forward and caught her gently. "When did you last eat?" he asked, his voice softer now. 3, maybe 4 days, she whispered. He guided her to the chair near the fireplace and moved with sure, practiced hands. In minutes, he had a fire burning again, warm and bright. The smell of burning wood filled the cabin, and Sarah felt warmth touch her skin for the first time in days. Jake hung one of the rabbits on a hook and began to skin it with an easy skill that showed years of experience. "You're Tom Henderson's widow," he said quietly. "Heard he passed. I'm sorry. Tom was a good man." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She nodded but couldn't speak. It had been so long since anyone said Tom's name with respect. It made her heart ache and heal at the same time. Jake seasoned the rabbit meat and placed it over the fire. Soon, the rich smell of cooking food filled the cabin. Sarah's stomach twisted with hunger, but she forced herself to sit still, to not look desperate. Jake unpacked his supplies: flour, beans, salt, coffee, more food than she had seen in months. "I can't pay you," she said quietly. "I have nothing left." Quote. Jake looked at her and shook his head. "Ma'am, there were days I was 1 meal away from freezing to death in these mountains. Someone helped me then. I'm just returning the favor." His words warmed her more than the fire. When the meat was cooked, Jake served her a plate. The first bite nearly made her cry. Warm, tender, real food. She ate slowly, afraid that eating too fast would make her sick. Jake sat across from her as he ate, keeping his voice calm and gentle. He didn't pry, didn't judge, didn't act like she owed him. For the first time in months, Sarah felt safe. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Snow hit the cabin like fists. Jake glanced toward the window, then back at her. "Ma'am, storm's getting worse. I don't think I should ride out tonight. Mind if I sleep by the fire? I'll stay on my side of the room, won't be a bother." Sarah hesitated, fear and loneliness fighting inside her chest. A stranger in her cabin overnight, but sending him into the storm could kill him. And deep down, she didn't want to be alone anymore. "Yes," she said. "Stay. Please." Jake nodded, laid his bedroll near the fireplace, keeping a respectful distance. Sarah watched him, noticing the calmness in his movements, the strength in his hands, and the quiet respect he showed her. She felt the first spark of something she thought had died with Tom. Hope. Sarah woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of an axe striking wood. For a moment she lay still, fearing it was only a dream. But the warmth in the cabin, the steady crackle of the fire, and the rich scent of breakfast told her it was real. She sat up slowly, feeling stronger than she had in weeks. Through the frosted window she saw Jake outside splitting wood with strong, sure swings. His breath rose in white clouds as he worked. Snow covered the world in a bright blanket, and the early sun made it sparkle like thousands of tiny diamonds. When she stepped outside, wrapped in her shawl, Jake looked up and gave her a small smile. "Morning." "Coffee's ready, and I've got some meat cooking. You'll need strength today." Sarah accepted the warm tin cup he offered. The heat of it stung her cold fingers in the best way. She sipped it slowly, letting the bitter taste wake her fully. "You've already done so much," she said softly. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need," Jake replied. "We'll call it neighbors helping neighbors." They spent the morning working together. Jake chopped wood and stacked it by the cabin, while Sarah arranged the supplies he brought. As she watched him move with steady strength, she felt a strange warmth in her chest. It had been a long time since she had felt safe with someone. Once, while carrying wood inside, Jake caught her looking at him longer than she meant to. "You're staring," he said, not unkindly. Sarah flushed. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's all right," he said. "It's been a long time since anyone looked my way like that." "Like what?" she asked. Jake leaned on the handle of the axe and met her gaze. "Like I'm worth looking at." His honesty surprised her. She felt the air grow warm between them despite the snow. "You are," she said softly. Something softened in his expression, a warmth that reached his eyes. But he didn't push the moment further. Instead, he returned to work, yet Sarah felt the words hang in the air like a promise. Later, they checked the trap lines together. With Jake's help, they reset them properly. His voice was calm as he taught her how to secure the traps and scent the area to draw animals in. "Tom showed me once," Sarah said quietly, "but I wasn't strong enough to keep them going." Jake paused, his breath hanging in the cold air. "Tom taught you because he believed you could." And he was right. They returned to the cabin before dark. After dinner, they sat by the fire, the storm outside calmer than the night before. The crackling firelight made shadows dance across the wood walls. Sarah looked at Jake, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. "Why did you really come?" she asked. "There are other cabins in these mountains, other people who might need help." Jake stared into the fire for a long moment before answering. "I knew Tom," he said. "We weren't close friends, but we crossed paths. He spoke highly of you. A man doesn't talk like that unless he's proud and in love." Sarah swallowed hard. "I came because I know what it's like to be alone out here. And because walking away knowing someone was starving and freezing didn't sit right with me." Quote, his voice carried a truth that settled deep in her heart. He hadn't come for praise or reward. He came because he cared. The firelight softened the sharp lines of his face. Sarah spoke before fear could stop her. "I had given up," she admitted. "I thought about walking into the snow and letting it end." Jake shifted, turning to face her fully. "I've had those thoughts too," he said, "more than once. The mountain can break a person if they face it alone." "What stopped you?" Sarah asked. "A promise I made to myself," Jake replied. "That if I ever found someone worth staying alive for, I wouldn't waste the chance." Their eyes met, holding for a long moment. Sarah felt warmth spread through her, not from the fire, but from the connection growing between them. Jake cleared his throat gently. "I should let you get some sleep." But before he laid down, Sarah spoke again, her voice soft but steady. "Jake, will you stay? Not just tonight. I mean for a little while." He watched her carefully, searching her face for doubt. "If you want me to stay, I will," he said. "I do," she whispered. Jake nodded once. "Then I'll stay." That night felt different, safe, less cold. Sarah lay in bed listening to Jake breathe across the cabin. For the first time since Tom's death, she did not fall asleep with fear in her heart. She woke in the middle of the night to the sound of the wind, but instead of feeling afraid, she turned toward the soft glow of the fire Jake kept burning. Knowing he was there made the darkness less heavy. In the morning, the snow had stopped, and a clear blue sky greeted the mountains. Sarah stepped outside to find Jake feeding his horse and humming softly. The scene felt peaceful, almost like a life she never believed she could have again. Jake looked at her with a softness she had not seen in a long time. "Sarah," he said, using her first name for the first time. "Whatever happens from here, you're not alone anymore." Something shifted inside her, awakening something she thought had died with her husband. She wasn't sure if it was hope, trust, or something deeper. But it was real. Winter days passed with a new rhythm. Sarah and Jake worked side by side, slowly turning the cold, lonely cabin into a home filled with warmth, food, and life again. The snow still fell, the nights were still long, but Sarah no longer faced them alone. One morning, Jake returned from checking traps with a good catch of rabbits and a fox. As he skinned the animals outside, Sarah watched him from the doorway. His movements were calm and steady, his hands skilled, his face thoughtful in the cold morning air. There was strength in him, but not the kind that frightened her. It was a strength that protected, a strength that cared. That evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, the warmth between them felt stronger than the flames. Sarah folded the blanket on her lap, gathering her courage. "Jake," she began, her voice quiet. "These past days, I feel like I can breathe again, like I'm living again." He looked at her, listening with full attention, as he always did. "You remind me what life can feel like," she continued. "Not just surviving. Living. I thought that part of me was gone forever." Quote. Jake set his plate aside and leaned forward slightly. "You're allowed to live again, Sarah," he said gently. "Loving someone new doesn't erase the love you had with Tom. It just means your heart still knows how to beat." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they were warm tears, not the cold ones she had cried for so long. "I thought caring for someone again would mean I was betraying him," she whispered. Jake shook his head. "Tom loved you. A man who loves that deeply would never want you to spend your life suffering. He'd want you safe, he'd want you warm, he'd want you happy." Sarah's voice trembled. "And you make me feel all those things." Jake hesitated only a moment before he reached out and took her hand in his. His touch was warm and steady. "And you make me feel something I thought I lost after the war," he said. "A reason to stay alive. A reason to look forward to tomorrow." He paused, his voice low, honest. "I never thought I'd care for someone again, but I care for you, Sarah, more than I expected. More than I planned." Sarah's heart pounded. She had not felt this since before Tom died, this mix of fear, hope, and longing. "Jake," she whispered. "I care for you too." Silence settled, soft and full of promise. The wind outside seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of the fire crackling beside them. Jake moved closer, slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She didn't. When his lips met hers, the kiss was warm and gentle, like a man touching something precious. Sarah responded with a quiet need she could no longer hide. The kiss deepened, not rushed or wild, but honest, full of the loneliness they were both letting go of. When they parted, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "I'd trade 10 furs for one night with you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Not for anything improper, but just to hold you, to keep you warm, to let you sleep without fear. That's how much you matter to me." Sarah's heart swelled. She cupped his face in her hands. "You don't need to trade anything," she said softly. "Just stay." Quote. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something he had searched for across a lifetime of cold nights and lonely mountains. That night, they lay together, not out of need, but out of choice. Two hearts learning how to beat again. Days turned into weeks. Jake fixed the cabin walls to keep out the wind. He taught Sarah how to trap, how to hunt small game, how to survive the mountain the way he did. She began teaching him to read better, writing short lessons by lantern light. One afternoon, a knock came at the door. A traveling merchant named Mike had supplies, and a message. Someone in town had arranged for Sarah to receive coffee, flour, warm blankets, and even some seeds for spring planting. Paid for in advance. Sarah looked at Jake with raised brows. He pretended to cough. Could have been anyone. But the small smile tugging at his mouth gave him away. "You did this?" she asked softly after the merchant left. Jake removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair. "I just wanted you to have a chance at more than surviving," he said. "A chance to build something." Quote, Sarah stepped closer. "You already gave me that chance the night you knocked on my door." Spring arrived slowly, breaking winter's grip on the mountains. Together, they built a small pen for goats and started planning for a garden. Life had returned, not only to the land, but to Sarah's heart. One clear morning, Jake stood with her overlooking the valley, sunlight warming the snow patches that remained. "I never planned on staying in one place," he said quietly. "I always believed the mountains were my only partner. But now I want more than the trail. I want a life, a home. With you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring he had made from a piece of leather and a tiny polished stone. "It's simple," he said, "but it's honest. Sarah, may I stay? Not as a guest, not as a helper, but as the man who loves you. If you'll have me." Sarah took the ring, tears streaming freely down her cheeks, not of grief, but of joy. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "Stay. Build this life with me. I want that too." Quote, Jake pulled her close as the wind rushed across the valley, no longer a cold warning but a blessing. The mountain had taken much from them both, but it had given them something far greater. A second chance at love. A second chance at life.